Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. If you notice, my name is Marcus, by the way. I'm the Director of Graduate Admission here at Roger Williams. And you're in my living room, as I'm sure you've probably seen a lot of folks working remotely now, so welcome here. If you could just let me know that you can hear me, you'll see on the box on the side of your screen, if you're on a desktop, there's a questions box. Or if you're on your mobile device, there's a questions box at the bottom. If you could just say you hear me and maybe where you're from, that would be great, just so I can make sure you're hearing me okay. And I'm going to try to watch that on my screen here, and hopefully you're all hearing me well. I appreciate you taking the time out to join us and hear a little bit more about the full-time graduate programs we offer here at Roger Williams. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have as we go throughout the session. So please let me know if you have any, either during or at the end of the session, and we'll spend some time doing that. Great, I can see a few of you responding, so thanks for that. So I'm going to start first, tell you a little bit about Roger Williams. I know some of you are probably new to hearing about who we are. There's a photo on the right side of the screen. That's our main campus in Bristol, Rhode Island. We are a private nonprofit institution. We have about 4,000 undergraduate students. And between our graduate and law programs, we have about 800 students. So it's about 320 in graduate programs and about 450 or so in our law school. We have the only law school in the state of Rhode Island, so that's kind of a nice kind of professional side of our campus. We have both the main campus here in Bristol, and then also up in Providence, we have our Metro Center, and I'll tell you a little bit more about those programs there. One thing that's really nice about the community and the university here is that part of our mission is really living up to the namesake, our namesake Roger Williams, who started the state of Rhode Island hundreds of years ago, and really was committed to religious freedom, community service, inclusion. So those types of things are really central to our mission and our vision now. So hopefully you'll see that how our programs really lend themselves well to that mission, and you'll be able to have opportunities to connect with that as well. So a little bit about our location, at least our main campus in Bristol, which is where most of you as full-time students will be studying. And I know most of you are interested in the forensic and legal or the forensic mental health counseling programs, architecture programs. So I'll talk a little bit more in depth about those programs in particular. Both of those programs or all three of them, I should say, are on our Bristol campus, in our main campus in Bristol. And so you see that noted on the map there. And I'll just zoom in a little bit more closely. We're right on the waterfront, so it's a really pretty spot where we are. We're roughly about an hour from Boston, an hour's drive, and maybe 2 hours and 15 minutes, 2.5 hours to New York City, and a little under 2 hours to Hartford, Connecticut. So we're in the middle of some major cities here, especially for architecture. That really gives you some opportunity for firms, working with firms and internships and practicum opportunities and so on. And certainly for forensic psychology, we have a lot of forensic hospitals, treatment centers, courts, law enforcement agencies, and so on. So there's a lot of places for internships and research in our immediate area. So the programs that you'll find on our Bristol campus include our architecture and preservation programs in our School of Architecture, our construction management program, our criminal justice master's program, as well as our 2 programs in forensic and legal psychology and forensic mental health counseling, and then our new program in special education. So our School of Education is based in Bristol as well. So if you like the water, it's a nice spot to be. That's one of the reasons why I was attracted to come here about 5 years ago and join the campus community, among other things. But certainly the location is very nice, especially in the warmer months. We're starting to get into the springtime here. It's a little gray here today, but we had some really nice days the last couple of days, which helped with allowing us to get outside, especially given what's going on with the virus outbreak and not being stuck in the house any longer than we have to be. But that's our campus you see there on the screen. I'm going to show you one other photo of our campus just from a different angle. This is looking to the south over the Mount Hope Bridge, and that's Mount Hope Bay that you see there. Narragansett Bay off to the right side, Mount Hope Bay to the left. And straight ahead of us there is Aquidneck Island. And if you've heard of Newport, Rhode Island, Newport is the southernmost town on Aquidneck Island. There's 3 towns, Portsmouth, Middletown, and Newport on the island, and many students will live in that area. I live in Middletown, where I'm broadcasting now, and that's right smack in the middle of the island. So they were very creative when they named Middletown. but that's very close to us. And then if you go up across the bridge there and kind of to the left, you'll eventually go up north on Route 24 toward Boston. So that's kind of the best way to get to there from campus. And I'll talk more about housing in the local area a little bit later. So on the left-hand side in that photo, you see that's our Bristol campus, and on the right side is Providence. Providence we have our Metro Center there. We have had established campus there for many years, but the last about 3 or 4 years, we've been in a new location at 1 Empire Street. It's this beautiful new facility that we renovated there right downtown. And our M.B.A. program for business administration students, as well as our M.P.A. for public administration, and our master's in leadership programs are all offered there in Providence. So they really are right in the heart of it all. And for those programs, it makes sense to be in an urban setting. Then our criminal justice, cybersecurity, leadership, and public administration programs can all be done fully online. Cybersecurity is only online for us. The others have hybrid campus opportunities as well, but you can do them fully online if you wish. So there are some online options for those programs. So as I mentioned, I know most of you, I think everybody on the call that I can see on the list here is interested in the forensic and legal psychology or the Master of Architecture program. So I'll spend a little extra time on those and then just a little bit briefly on each of the others. We have our Master of Architecture program is a license eligible NAAB accredited program here. It's the prime location between Boston and New York. It's arguably one of the busiest architecture corridors, not only in the United States, but also in the world. So it gives students a lot of opportunity for working with firms and the internships and the really kind of community-based work that we do. All of our students in architecture as well as preservation get a guaranteed paid assistantship or internship. So you get $3,000 a year to go and work with a firm or complete an assistantship on campus. So most of the students will opt to work with firms, and it's really designed to get your foot in the door and get you out and working with firms. So it's really helpful in terms of getting students jobs. Most students, when they graduate, have already been working with a firm through that program, and ultimately most of them get hired. So that gives them opportunities for jobs before they've even walked across the stage at graduation. We also have study abroad opportunities in that program, primarily in Barcelona and Beijing. That's of course changed a little bit this spring, but typically students can do a full semester abroad and still stay on their schedule to complete their program within 2 to 3 years, depending on your undergraduate curriculum. If you have a pre-professional degree in architecture, you can complete the Master of Architecture in just 2 years. Otherwise, it's a 3 to 3.5 year program for students without either a background or at least an accredited architecture undergraduate degree. We also offer a series of scholarships for students based on your GPA, and that's guaranteed. So if you have a 3.0 or higher, you will be guaranteed a scholarship. We have 3 different deadlines for that program. Our last one is for May 1st this year. So if you are considering the architecture program for the fall, it is filling up, but we do have some limited availability, and we can take your application through May 1st. And again, it's about 2 to 3 and 3.5 years to complete the program. So quickly here, I'm just going to mention that we have 3 different pathways, and this influences the length of your program. Path 1 being for students that come with that pre-professional degree. It's a 2-year program. And Path 1 actually is internal students. So really the external students would fall under Path 2, still a 2-year program, but you have an accredited pre-professional degree. And everyone else will fall into that Path 3. We have about 100 to 110 students at any given time. Again, we are NAAB accredited, so when it comes to getting licensed in the United States, you have to get a Master of Architecture or a Bachelor of Architecture. It's a 5-year program, but you have to get your Master of Architecture in order to practice ultimately in the United States and be licensed, which also requires a number of hours in the field once you graduate. This is just a very quick overview of curriculum. You see a number of studios. Ultimately, the studio is what determines the length of your program. We have our Samsung Design Studio, so all of the studio spaces are outfitted with Samsung technology. Most of our architecture students have laptops, so you'll connect up to your Samsung monitors at your studio space. And you'll also have access to rCloud, which is great for both architecture and the forensic psychology programs because you log into a virtual environment, which particularly now is helpful. And there's over 100 different software packages available in a cloud environment for you. It doesn't cost you any additional money. And for the architecture students, you have access to things like Rhino and the Adobe Suite, For forensic students, you can get SPSS and the most current version of SPSS on there and access all of your research in a virtual environment, store your files there. So anywhere that you have internet access, you can access all of these software packages and the various files that you might store for your work. As far as this curriculum for architecture, we are not necessarily in a singular lane, so we don't prescribe that students do architecture in a specific way. We really try to encourage students to think outside the box, be innovative, really harvest that whatever design interest that they have. And so we really have a particular interest in your aesthetic skills for the aesthetic and your design skills. We can teach you the technicals, but we want students to be creative and want to work in the areas that are most interesting to them. We also have a series of electives, so students can do certificates in urban and regional planning and also preservation practices, so you can kind of customize your studies while you're here. We also have a practicing firm and residence program, so each semester 2 firms from often Boston or New York or Connecticut will come in and teach these studios. So the graduate studios are actually taught by firms, not by our faculty. And that really gives you an opportunity to work with real world projects and ultimately get hired. Many of these faculty will hire, or the firms will hire students right from their studios. And as I mentioned, you can do study abroad as well in Barcelona or Beijing. We have a partnership with the Barcelona Architectural Center. There's 4 American universities that share that space. And the money that we provide as part of that annual assistantship or internship that's paid for you can be portable. So you can actually go and work with a firm in Barcelona while you're there if you wish, or you can go, if you're from California or Colorado or wherever you're coming from, you can actually be paid to work at a firm that's closer to home or maybe in an area that you just want to explore a little bit more and do that over the summer. So there's a lot of options with that. I mentioned our design studio. This gives you a little sense of some of the technology that's in there. We're actually going through and upgrading that technology the next year or so. So we have a lot of touchscreen technology throughout the building. The Samsung, the CEO, maybe I'm getting this wrong, or the COO, no, I think he was CEO of Samsung North America, was actually an alumni of Roger Williams. He did his undergraduate degree, I believe, in the communication program, and is now the chairman of our board. And he has worked a lot of opportunities for us to partner with Samsung over the years. So we've got a lot of great technology. And again, through rCloud, you can get access to AutoCAD, Revit, Rhino, and so on. So you have access to all that software, no additional cost. And the best part of rCloud too is that you don't have to download any of these software packages on your own computer and keep them updated. They're constantly updated through this cloud environment. I mentioned the firms in residence. This is a list of just some of the firms that have engaged with us over the years, but they are from everywhere from New York to Boston to Greenwich, Connecticut, New Haven, Connecticut, Stanford. We've had some firms that they'll go between us and Cornell, even at Yale University. So there's a lot of great firms that come through our walls that are teaching students and also providing regular lectures. And so we had, for example, the firm that was selected for the Obama Presidential Library come and speak on our campus last year. So our students really got to hear from a great modern firm that's working on a really topical project. So again, quickly, I'll talk about some of the other full-time programs as we go along. We have our 36-credit Master of Business Administration program, or M.B.A. It's offered in Providence. It's for anyone with an undergraduate business degree. It is full-time only, and it's only 1 year. So what's nice is you can get that over with in a year. You also do an internship and study abroad experience as part of that 1 year. So you have you get a lot of really value for that 1 year of study. And again, that's offered in our Providence campus. Our Master of Science in Construction Management was initially offered back in 2010 or so, and it was during a time where, unfortunately, real estate and the construction industry were hit really hard. So we had that program around for a couple of years and then decided to put it on hold for a little while. We brought it back a couple of years ago, and we've had a lot of great students come through, both full-time and part-time. It's great for international students, as well as some of our domestic students working with construction firms. It's offered on our main campus in Bristol, and it's really kind of an upper level program that's oversight of project management, construction, strategic planning, financials, and so on. So it's a great program that's offered within our School of Engineering that's nationally recognized for not only engineering, but construction management. We have the national accreditation for that, for our undergraduate program. I mentioned we have an MS in Criminal Justice program, and This is going to be relevant as well to the forensic psychology students, because occasionally the forensic students will have faculty from the criminal justice program serve on the thesis committee, or occasionally they will take classes that are electives, like forensic interviewing that's done by one of our faculty members in CJ. It's actually, she's recognized as a national expert in forensic interviewing. So there's some great information to be gleaned there. Our MS in Criminal Justice program is our oldest graduate program. We've had it around for some, 25 years, something like that, maybe longer. It's a 36 credit program. It's done in a hybrid fashion, so they meet every other week, or you can do it fully online. And we look at both criminal justice management and also the nature and causes of crime. So it's kind of a multifaceted program. And electives are offered that allow you to take classes in public administration, even the forensic psych program, leadership, cybersecurity, and so on. Depending on your undergraduate curriculum and how quickly you want to complete your degree, you can complete the degree in as little as 1 year, though most full-time students often do it in 1.5 to 2 years. Now, I know we have a number of you interested in the forensic program, so I'll spend a little extra time on each of these as well, and I can answer any questions that you have more specifically about them, or if you'd like, I'm happy to set up a phone call, a virtual meeting with you if you'd like to talk more about your interests. What's really critical coming into either of the forensic programs is understanding what the differences are between the two programs, and also what ultimately your interests are long-term, what kind of job you want to obtain, whether you want to get a doctorate or not, those types of things you'll have to start thinking about if you haven't already. Now, the MA in Forensic and Legal Psychology program is our research program. So the goal of this program is to get students into PhD study. So long-term, you're building up strong research acumen and a thesis to make you eligible and be marketable to doctoral faculty when you graduate from the program. So it's only 45 credits. It's still a 2-year program. It's only offered on our Bristol campus full-time. We take between 8 and 10 new students a year into this program, so it is small, and that's deliberate, so we're giving you high-quality research experiences. In the first year, you're going to be doing a full year of directed research, and that's under the guidance of a faculty member who's doing research already, so you're helping with an existing research project. Ideally, students will be working on research in that time that ultimately gets them opportunities to present or even publish in the first year and not the second year of the program. Many students will publish their entire time that they're here, but ultimately by doing that in the first year and getting opportunities to present at national conferences or even international conferences after your first year, you're getting in front of PhD faculty at that time. You're networking, you're showing your work, you're showing your research acumen. So when it comes to applying for PhD programs, you often know some of these faculty already, they know you. In some cases, we've had faculty at those conferences come up to one of our students and say, I want you in my program, I want you in my lab. So they've been identified at that time. The beauty of that is that since you're doing that in your first year, when you're applying for doctoral programs, which happens in typically the fall of your second year because deadlines are usually in December, you've already networked with faculty at that time. Many of those conferences are unfortunately in the spring and summer. So if you were only presenting in your second year, you're already through most of your program and already applied to your doctoral programs before you're ever publishing or presenting. So our goal is to get you presenting at conferences like American Psychology Law Society or American Psychological Association or Eastern Psychological Association or the Association for Treatment of Sexual Abusers, those types of conferences in your first year. So you're getting opportunities to present that research and ultimately connect with PhD faculty. Now, our application deadlines for this year have passed already. We have some very limited availability if you're considering applying for this fall. I know a number of you indicated that you were interested in spring of 21. Unfortunately, this program and the Forensic Mental Health Counseling program only admits in the fall, and that's due to the sequence of the coursework. So if you're interested in potentially considering this fall, please reach out to me right away, and I'll help you determine if that might be a possibility with some very limited seats available at the moment. Otherwise, we can have you apply for fall of 21, and you'll follow the regular deadlines of February 1st and February 15th. Now, February 1st is a priority deadline for financial aid. So you can still get loans and things, and I'll talk to you about that later, but in order to be considered for scholarships or assistantships, you have to apply by February 1st. So definitely apply in advance of that deadline to help you with the best opportunities for aid from us. So I mentioned students presenting at conferences. Not only do they do directed research in the first year, but in the second year, you'll do a thesis, and it's a comprehensive thesis project that you're going to be developing over the course of your first year. And even though some students come in with a pretty clear idea of what they think they want to do, through that directed research work, they often experience something and they go, I'm really interested in that, so I'm going to go pursue my thesis in that work instead. So you'll find that that kind of evolves over time in that first year, and then through your methods coursework in your first year, you're going to start developing your ideas for your thesis, and you're going to spend the bulk of your second year collecting data, doing survey analysis, and ultimately putting your thesis together and presenting it. And as I mentioned before, some students will have faculty not only from psychology on their thesis committee, but also from criminal justice or even the law school. So you have some options to do that. You see some of the conferences here that students apply, that are presenting at both regionally and nationally. This is not an exhaustive list. Students present at a lot of different conferences here and internationally. I had the opportunity to go to Montreal last year for the International Congress on Applied Psychology. We had a number of students present posters there, so there's opportunities for that. I know ICAP or there was a separate conference that was going to be in Paris this year that unfortunately got postponed, but there are a lot of opportunities to go abroad if you wish. I think one's going to be in Prague coming up, which that'll be exciting. Very quickly, from a curriculum standpoint for the forensic students, this is what your 2 years looks like. You're taking 12 credits, which is 4 courses at a time in the fall and spring. And then you're taking either 12 and 9 or 9 and 12, it varies, in the second year, so 4 and 3 or 3 and 4 classes. Notice that all of your semesters have 3 credits of research in them. So those aren't classes that are meeting. So you're doing directed research in that first year for each fall and spring. So really you're in 3 classes that are actually meeting with a group of students. And similarly, 3 and 2 in the second year, because you're working on your research and your thesis. And of course, you'll be meeting with faculty on a regular basis as you're doing your thesis work and testing hypotheses and all that kind of stuff. Now, on the forensic mental health counseling side, and again, it's important to think about the differences of these 2 programs. And I know that it can be confusing for students because oftentimes your interests might be all over the map. You might be interested in different populations. You might be 50-50 on whether you want to do research or not. So there's a lot of different factors that influence what you're choosing to do. For everyone on the call, regardless of your program, you're going to be selecting a graduate program based on the appropriate fit. In undergrad, you can kind of pursue anything. I mean, you can, a lot of students, you know, I went into mass communication, for example. A lot of students become comm majors because they can't think of what else they want to do, and it can be applied to anything else. Psychology can be that way similarly for some students. But with undergrad, you can afford to make a mistake. And that's not to say that any of you made a mistake where you chose to go or what program you selected. But as you get into graduate school, your master's and ultimately your doctoral studies, if you choose to go that far, are really what's charting your course for your career and ultimately what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So you want to make the right decision on the right program, the right institution. And so sometimes students can focus on they just want to go to a particular location or they want to spend a certain amount of money. And unfortunately, that's very short-sighted because they're not thinking about, am I going to a place because a faculty member is doing the research I want, or is the program that I'm interested in going to give me the internships that I want to get into, or get me the job that I want, or do I see alumni doing the jobs that I want to do? So all of those things are important when you're evaluating fit for your graduate studies. So I say that all because, at least in the context of the forensic programs, you've got 2 different programs. One's very research focused, and for most students, when I ask them if they want to do research, that question in and of itself helps them determine which program is right for them. But in other circumstances, some want to do a little bit of research, but then others are like, well, I'd like to be licensed. Now, to become a licensed professional in psychology, you can either do that as a master's level clinician, which would mean getting a 60-credit graduate degree. Most states require 60 credits. I think there's only a couple of them that allow some sort of alternative. Alabama is one, and then there's another one in the mountain region, I believe, South Dakota or something. But everybody else requires 60 graduate credits. So If you want to be a licensed master's level clinician, so again, if you want to see patients one-on-one, which most of the psychology students I talk to want to do, you have to have a license to do that. And you can get your license in one of two ways. You either get a master's level credential, like the forensic mental health counseling that we have here, or clinical mental health counseling or something similar, even a master's of social work, MSW, is a 60 credit program. You get those 60 credits, you go work for a year or two, typically 2 to 3 years for licensure requirements, and then you can become licensed and you go and work and you can practice and see patients one-on-one. The other option to get licensed is to get a PhD or a PsyD. PsyD is a doctorate that's exclusive largely to psychology programs and is really designed for people who want to be more applied in their work. They aren't necessarily interested in doing significant research, although they do some. They're more interested in how research impacts the work that they do and how they can become good clinicians. So a PsyD is a great program for students that you want to get your doctorate ultimately, but you don't necessarily want to do a lot of research. Now, if you're interested in doing work in the courts, which often involves some sort of assessments for whether somebody's fit to stand trial, or if somebody's eligible for parole, and you have to go in and determine have they successfully rehabilitated in prison, and do we feel like they are not going to be a danger to themselves or others if we release them on parole. Those types of assessments require a doctorate. So you have to have a PhD or a PsyD, but both of those doctorates really open those doors. We've seen PsyDs and PhDs functionally do the same things in the courts. Now in the long run, if you want to do research and be in a lab and do those types of things, a PhD is probably going to be a better fit for you. But if you want to work in the courts and do more clinical work and assessments and all of that, a PhD or a PsyD will do that for you. And certainly if you don't want to do research, I would not encourage you to go into a PhD just for the sake of getting a PhD. A PsyD will give you the work that you need and the credential that you need to work in more clinical settings. So that's kind of a long-winded kind of overview of that, and I hope that's helpful. The 60 credit program, and let me show you the curriculum. Similarly to the forensic and legal program, it is 2 years. However, you're doing a lot more credits in that first year, and then you're doing 9 credits in the summer. So you're still doing it in 2 years, but you're going straight through. The forensic and legal psychology students get a little bit of a breather in the summer, but the forensic mental health counseling students do not. The first year, remember, for all of you on the call, if you're gonna be a full-time graduate student, most full-time students at the graduate level, at the master's level, pursue 9 credits at a time. Usually that's 3 courses. So you see here, there's 15 credits in that first semester and in the second semester for the forensic mental health counseling program. So this is a heavy course load. So you're gonna be very busy. It's not a bad thing, but it is a very busy course load for a graduate student. So it's just something to be, prepared for. You'll notice in the second semester that you have a practicum for 100 hours. So similar to the forensic and legal students who are doing directed research for 3 credits, you're now doing 100 hours total across the semester in a practicum. And in that practicum, you're typically shadowing a practicing therapist. You might be doing some training for typically 5 to 8 hours per week. So it's not a heavy load, but that's part of that field work that you start doing in that second semester. In the summer term, you'll now have 2 classes plus, again, another 100 hours in practicum. So cumulatively, you're doing 200 hours of practicum. Then when you get into that second year, you notice you have far less courses. You have 3 courses in the fall, 2 in the spring, but you have significantly more hours in internship. Overall, you're going to do 300 hours per internship block, so 600 hours total. And those are usually 15 to 20 hours per week in an internship. And your courses are in the evenings. So your courses shift a little bit, so you're coming back from work and going into class a couple nights a week. And then you're doing your internship most days, not every day necessarily, but most days, and working maybe 5 to 8 hour shift at a time. So those placements are anywhere around our local area, because you're going to be still in classes during that time. So you're not doing them remotely, from a home state or something. Those placements range from, again, we have a couple of forensic hospitals here. We have the Massachusetts Treatment Center, which is for sexually dangerous persons. So if you want to work with sex abusers, We have a federal detention facility there in Bridgewater, Mass. We have a federal correctional facility in Devens, Massachusetts, a little bit further away. We have a number of courts in the local area that will take interns. We have interns in court clinics, counseling centers in this area. And the difference primarily between the kind of general clinical mental health counseling program and the forensic mental health counseling program is that we have a few courses that are dedicated to forensic populations, so you'll certainly be doing that. We'll have electives in substance abuse and other things. But your placements are going to really differentiate you in the forensic programs because your placements will be with forensic populations. Now, forensic populations can be victims of crime, they can be criminals, they could be people that are rehabilitating to society, maybe people that have substance abuse issues, could be divorce-related stuff with children, could be juvenile prisons or detention facilities like the Rhode Island Training School as a juvenile detention facility. Could be working with veterans, maybe with PTSD issues. So there's a lot of different types of work, but these are populations that they're kind of carved into the judicial system in some way. And here's another list that looks similar to that last list as far as placements for our interns, but also where many of them have worked. And interestingly enough, now that we've had the program for some time, we are one of the more established forensic psychology programs in the country. We're not bandwagon schools that created this after CSI became popular. These placements, what's interesting is that many of these placements where we're putting interns now, our alumni are the ones that are supervising them. So it's really kind of come full circle to see how our students have done. And so there's some similar placements here. The other beauty of that with the 60 credit program, with the internship hours, you're working in a facility that invests a lot of time and training into your work. So many of them will hire our students after they're done. So similar to how the architecture students are getting their foot in the door with firms, our forensic mental health counseling students are getting their foot in the door with counseling centers and the courts and so on. So they're getting opportunities for jobs, again, before they even graduate. So you'll open up a lot of doors that way, which is really helpful. Now, our students that have pursued doctoral study, they've gone all over the place, and both from the forensic and legal program and the forensic mental health counseling program, which the forensic mental health counseling program was a little bit surprising to me because when we added the 60 credit program now 3 years ago. I think this will be our either third or fourth cohort this fall. We've had forensic and legal psychology for a long time. Our program's been around for now almost 13 years. And when we created that program and we had students coming in, they're taking classes like research methods together. You know, if we bring in, say, 20 students now, so the forensic mental health counseling students, we bring in about 10 to 15 new students a year in the forensic mental health counseling program. Now, when we didn't have that before, we had maybe 20 students that would come in. Half the students wouldn't be interested in research at all, and half of them wanted to give me the best research that I could have to get into a PhD program. So we had a little bit of a split on how we can support all of those students. So that was one of the reasons why we created the 60 credit license program, because half of our students didn't necessarily want to do research, but they wanted to go work. And if you go and try to work with a 45 credit master's program, it's not a whole lot you can do, at least if you want to become a clinician where you're working one-on-one with patients. As I mentioned before, you need a license to do that. That's why for you, as you're searching for programs, if your goal is to become licensed, or at least have the option to be licensed after your master's, you have to select a 60 credit program. I have unfortunately run into a lot of students that have done 42 credit programs, 45 credit programs, and they graduate and they go, oh, I can't get certified, and then they have to go back to school. And oftentimes when they go back to school, they get what's called a Certificate of Advanced Graduate Study, or a CAGS, and that's usually 30 credits. So you may have already paid for 42 or 45 credits in one program. Now you have to pay for 30 more. So now you've paid for 75 credits when you could have done the program in 60 credits. So if you're thinking about a license eligible program, definitely select a 60 credit program. You'll be in a lot better shape in the long run. But all of that said, if you decide to go into a doctorate, we've seen roughly about 30 to 40%, depends on the year, but about 30 to 40% of our forensic mental health counseling students go on to PsyD programs after they graduate. They've decided that they want to work in the courts and have those opportunities, so they've decided to go further on into doctoral programs. So a number of them go on to William James, for example, in Boston, Nova Southeastern down in Florida, University of Denver, one of the top applied PsyD programs in the country. We placed one in Loma Linda in California. So we've placed students all over the place at a number of PsyDs. Now on the PhD side, the forensic and legal psychology students, many of them pursue PhDs in clinical psych. And I'm sure a lot of you know, getting into PhDs in clinical psych is very difficult. It's a very competitive process. It's competitive. The programs are very competitive. They take very few students. They're often placing students in very specific research labs. So you're working with a specific faculty member. And so it's very cutthroat in getting into those programs. So even for our graduates of the master's program, it's still challenging to get in there. So it's not a golden ticket, but by all means, it helps you a lot because you've got 2 years of research experience under your belt and you're building your CV or your resume. So that makes you more marketable when you go and apply for these PhD programs. So we've had students, the gentleman, for example, the second from the left in the white shirt there, Max Christensen, he went on to the PhD in clinical psychology program at Sam Houston State in Texas, one of the top clinical programs in the country. He has a great forensic lab there, so he's doing the forensic track. We just had a student that she got admitted to not 1, but 4 PhD clinical programs, which we were just through the moon for her. She's going to, I believe it's the University of Iowa. There's a top legal psychologist who has a lab there that she got placed with. We just placed a student at the University of Wyoming, again, another legal psychologist and a legal lab there. We placed a few students in Canada the past couple of years. Ontario Institute of Technology, actually, Dr. Cutler is one of, he's kind of a world-renowned forensic researcher. We've placed a student there, she's second year there. We have a student now at Carleton University doing forensic research. We just graduated a student from the PhD at Carleton as well, and he's working with sex abusers, so he's very interested in that work and worked with Dr. Leguizamo on our faculty. So long story longer, we've had a lot of students that went on to some great PhD programs. Not all go on to clinical programs. Some are interested in doing experimental psych or applied psych, so they've gone on to PhD programs like that, and they're all over the place. One's in the experimental program, I believe it's at the University of Toledo. There's one in a quantitative program at University of Rhode Island right now. We put one this year at Indiana State in the PsyD program. We have a whole handful of students at the University of Denver in their PsyD. The young lady in the middle, Keely Angelo, in the blue dress, she's at the PhD in clinical program at Palo Alto out in California. So we've placed a lot of students all over the place, and you have some great opportunities. So we really give you all of the tools and the options for you to take advantage of. And so it's a matter of you really working on them when you get here. But we really hand you those opportunities so that you can open those doors for doctoral study on either side. Otherwise, the one side benefit of the forensic mental health counseling program that I'll mention to you, if you're thinking about being more applied and you're kind of on the fence about research, you're not necessarily, I mean, if you want to get a PhD and you're not telling me that you're over the moon about research, you have to really be thinking about what the best program is. PhD program, you're committing yourself to at least really 5 years of research. And if you don't love research, that's an awfully long time to commit to something that you're going to be kind of half into. And I think faculty and admissions committees will know whether you're into it or not. So if you're really kind of on the fence, think about that and whether you love research or not, because loving research is really kind of central to doing well in a PhD program. But that said, for students that go into forensic mental health counseling, if you're really interested in being applied, you might like that option for licensure. Even if you're thinking about PsyD, and we have some students that they come to us and they're saying right when they get into the program, my goal is to get a PsyD, and I know that, and they go right through and they go into a PsyD and they do great. But for some students, they're kind of on the fence, and whether it be for financial reasons or they're not sure if they need a doctorate or want a doctorate, the nice thing about the mental health counseling program is if you get a license eligible degree at the master's level, you can stop after your master's. You can say, I don't want to pay more money for grad school now, or I want to go work for a while and save up some money. Or maybe I don't want to go to school anymore. Maybe I'm just all schooled out. I don't want to do 4 more years of study in this ID program. At the end of a license eligible master's, you can do that and go work and ultimately get licensed. And you can work the rest of your career and be licensed and do well financially and be great. And you don't necessarily need your doctorate. Unfortunately, with those shorter programs, a 45 credit program, 42 credit program, you might see at other places, you don't have those same options because you can't necessarily work and counsel patients without those. A couple of quick stories I just wanted to show you about the forensic programs. One of our graduates, Rebecca Snyder, she graduated in 2016 from the 45 credit forensic program. And she worked with sexual assault victims in our student conduct area on campus. She ultimately got a job at a college in Maine and did that for a little while and supporting victims there. And now she works for the Attorney General's office in Michigan. And you all are probably very familiar with the Michigan State scandal and the 156 young women who were involved in the awful circumstances there with Larry Nassar. Rebecca was the victim advocate for all of those 156 women. She helped supporting them in writing and delivering their impact statements. So very important work that she did, it's work that we're very proud of. And she came back and actually spoke at our graduation last year, and we're really impressed with the work that she's done, certainly the contributions she's made to society and certainly to those women. This is also a good example of our students who are presenting after the first year. All the students you see in the photo there are first-year students. Back in 2018, they were first-year students. And we're presenting on capital punishment and jury views and perceptions of cases when you have the death penalty involved as a potential outcome. And they delivered a symposium at the Eastern Psychological Association conference in Philadelphia that year. We had a standing room only room, and it was a really interesting topic. And all those students are first-year students that ultimately got some great opportunities in the long run. But again, I was talking to you about first-year students having opportunities to go and present in that first year, open up those doors, and ultimately get placed. And most of the students in that photo have gone on to PhD programs or PsyD programs. So here's one of our students, and actually if you're familiar with APLS, American Psychology Law Society, they just had their annual conference. Fortunately, they had that right before we had a lot of these shutdowns and cancellations and things. They were in New Orleans. And so this is Danielle Beam, and forgive the quality of the phone photo there. But she won the top research poster at the conference. She graduated from our 45 credit program this past year, and she is now pursuing her doctorate at Indiana State. I believe it's a PsyD that she's doing there. She did some great research with Dr. DiCataldo in our program. And then this is a photo of Dr. Garrett Berman, who won the Advisor of the Year award for APLS as well. And all the students in the photo there are either current students or alumni. The program, actually 2 of them there are in doctoral programs. 2 were admitted to doctoral programs for this year because they're graduating, and the rest are first-year students. So really great group that we had at APLS this year. So transitioning a little bit away from the forensic programs, and if you have questions about forensic mental health counseling or forensic and legal psychology, again, please feel free to enter them in the box there, and I can get to them as we get to the end. Or let me know if you'd like to set up an individual session, and we can either talk this way or over the phone. So real quickly, we have an MS in Preservation Practices program. This is a 1 or 2 year program, depending on your background. The students in the photo on the right are actually working as part of a studio on the Newport mansions. So only about 25 minutes from campus, we have the historic mansions that I'm sure many of you have heard of. Down on the Cliff Walk area of Newport, famous area. We have a lot of yachts that come in and out of there and all that, so it's a really beautiful spot. But students who are interested in preserving the built environment or conserving materials, this is a great program that's very hands-on for that, unlike some of the other preservation programs that are more theoretical and more policy-oriented. Our students are actually doing work actively in the field. Again, there's a guaranteed paid internship as part of that program, some of the architecture program, and you can do study abroad with this program as well. And we also have our MA in Special Education. This is new this year. We've added as a hybrid option on our Bristol campus. We have teacher certification programs at our undergraduate level, and this program for anybody who's already certified to become a special educator at the elementary or secondary level. And it's really designed because special education, the definition has broadened from our more traditional definition that may have focused more on physical disabilities and IEPs. We're talking more broadly about cognitive disabilities and students just with cognitive and mental health supports, as well as the kind of cultural and inclusion issues that are now part of a lot of today's classrooms. And there's really a demand and a need for teachers of all kinds to have special education training. So that's something that we're really proud of as starting a new program, and again, kind of supporting the community and the needs of our state. And quickly, we have a couple of programs in our Providence Metro campus, our leadership and our public administration programs, both of which are hybrid and can be done online as well if you wish. But they are largely designed for working professionals, though we've had a number of students come in for full-time. I had a student from California who graduated last year and came into that program full-time in about a year and a half to get that done. And leadership is more broad, so it gives you some opportunities for management and organizational development, understanding change management, motivating personnel, motivating teams, aligning resources and staffing for institutional objectives, those types of things. And then on the M.B.A. side, that gives students a lot of opportunity on both healthcare and in public management for nonprofits, government, really kind of any public-facing type organizations with understanding the regulatory impacts of certain things, certain rules, again, personnel, budgeting, public policy, and those types of things. So if you're interested in applying, one thing that we're doing now to support students, because it's obviously a tough time and financially it's a struggle for many students, we're waiving all application fees between now and September 1st. So you can use the code HEALTHY and that'll waive your application fee. In addition to your application, we require your official college transcripts. They can be from, we need them from all of your undergraduate schools and graduate for that matter. But even if you've taken only 1 or 2 classes, we need you to submit those transcripts. That's a requirement for accreditation. If you're applying for the forensic programs, we require 3 letters of recommendation. They have to be, if you're applying the forensic and legal program, they have to all 3 be from faculty, from professors. If you're applying to the forensic mental health counseling program, we like to see a mixture of both professors and maybe an internship supervisor if you've had one. For all of our other programs, architecture and otherwise, we require 2 letters of recommendation, and they should be from professional sources. So again, faculty, internship supervisors, any of those would be fine. All of our programs also require a letter of intent or a personal statement. It really gives us an opportunity to see a little bit more about who you are, what you bring to a program, what interests you in the program, what you hope to do, if there's particular research or a job that you want to do. All of those things you can tell us about in your letter of intent. The leadership, M.B.A. and special ed programs require a resume. Of course, if any of you have work experience, regardless of your program, I encourage you to submit a resume. It helps us just get a little bit more of a sense of what you bring to the table. Our forensic psychology programs, both of them require the GRE, as does our M.B.A. program. The GRE is the Graduate Records Examination. It's basically the grad school version of the SAT. We're not looking for you to take a subject test. We only want to take the general standardized GRE. I'm happy to talk to you more about that exam and preparing for it and resources and things. Just let me know if you have questions on that. And then we also require a research sample for any of our forensic and legal psychology applicants, as well as preservation students. This is really ideally if you've done a research proposal in your junior year, and maybe even a major research or thesis in your senior year, or research project in your senior year. That's the most appropriate. And some students don't have the research project done by the time they're applying, and that's okay. So that's why your research proposal or something like it would be helpful. At the very least, we want to see a research paper. We don't usually like to see literary reviews, although sometimes that's all students have because some of their schools don't provide opportunities to do a lot of empirical research. So if that's the case, just send us a literary review, but we want to see that it's in appropriate style, APA style, and so on. So that'll help us get a sense of your writing and your research ability. You can apply on our website at grad.rwu.edu/apply. We also have some virtual sessions in there now. If you go to grad.rwu.edu, you'll see right in the main part of the page there links to our virtual sessions. We have a virtual tour on there now that I did a walking tour on my phone. We're all home right now and you can't see campus. So take a look at that. There's also one on financing. I also did some sessions specific to the forensic program as well as the Master of Architecture program. So you can see those all on that website. In addition to your application, obviously those additional materials you can send to us. Many can be sent online. So your research paper, your personal statement, even your letters of recommendation, as long as they come from your recommenders, can be emailed to us. You'll also see on the application, you'll be putting your recommender information in so that they can submit a recommendation in the system on your behalf. Your transcripts are really the only things we have to get in the mail unless your school participates in electronic transcript service. And in that case, if they send it to us electronically, we will accept that. Otherwise, you can just mail them to us, request them from your registrar's office. Once your application is complete and we have all your materials, we typically take about 2 weeks to get a decision back to you. The exception being the forensic programs, because we review by committee. And so the committee will take the whole batch of them and evaluate everybody together and then give us decisions back. And that often can take up to 4 weeks from the deadline. So if you applied back in November, we may be waiting till the deadline to review your application, but occasionally we will review some early and we'll let you know about that. Ultimately, if you choose to enroll, we have an enrollment commitment deposit and we can certainly discuss that later as you get further in the process. So for financial aid, many grad students, and again, I have a financing your grad education session on our website, so I encourage you to view that, but I'm also happy to talk you through that if you have any questions that you want to meet individually. But for master's level study, most of our grad students are paying, and this is true of most master's programs across the country, most students are paying for their studies through federal loans. And there's 2 major programs. One is the federal direct unsubsidized program, and the other is the Graduate Plus loan. As a graduate student, your parent information, your parents' assets and finances are no longer part of the FAFSA. So you're only going to be including your personal finances. What that means is you can qualify for more money. So through the federal direct unsubsidized loan, you get $20,500 per year. And you could also borrow up to what they call the cost of attendance through the Plus loan. If you wanted to, you can take private loans. Most students don't take private loans. They're not as favorable. The federal loans allow you to pay over time, longer periods of time. You have income-based payment plans. And even in some cases, if you go into public service, you have loan forgiveness programs for public service currently. We'll see if that changes at all with the administration. But if you go into public service, those federal loans can be forgiven if you work for 10 years. Now, additionally, some students will pursue employer reimbursement and so on if you're working. But for each of the programs that you're all interested in, for forensic and legal psychology, forensic mental health counseling, and architecture, they all have scholarships, scholarship offerings. The architecture students all get a scholarship if they're above a 3.0. The forensic and legal program and the forensic mental health counseling programs are a little bit more competitive. So we have a series of scholarships there that are offered to certain students based on your GPA and your GREs and ultimately who you are more broadly, between your letter of recommendation and your fit for the program. But your GPA and your GREs play a very strong role in selection for those. We also have some limited teaching assistantships. We have 2 of them for the forensic and legal program. And we offer every other year a diversity placement from that program to do research with our chief diversity officer. And we have an annual placement of Office of Institutional Research for students that have really strong quantitative and statistical skills. So they all provide varying scholarships from a quarter to a half tuition and an hourly stipend for work that you do on campus. In order to be eligible for financial aid, you have to be enrolled in at least 5 credits. For architecture students, that's at least 1 studio. For the forensic students and any others, you have to be enrolled in 2 classes at a time, 2 3-credit courses to be eligible. So all of your programs are eligible for aid. You have to fill out the free application for federal student aid to be considered. And these are, unfortunately, right now only for domestic students. For international students, the scholarships and any sort of institutional aid, including our paid internship are eligible for international students. The federal loans, however, are only available to American students. I mentioned in the previous slide a little bit about the cost of attendance. When you're talking about borrowing for your loans, your cost of attendance includes the tuition and fees, which are your mandatory costs, but then you have optional costs for your housing, food, any sort of books and supplies, your transportation, any miscellaneous expenses that you have while you're in school. That cost of attendance is a cap, so it allows you to borrow up to that cap. So when you're looking at the loan programs, the federal direct unsubsidized loan gives you $20,500 per year. And let's say your total cost of attendance estimate is $40,000. That means you can take $19,500 in the plus loan. So that's how that calculation works. Now, that 40,000 number I mentioned is not a mandatory number, and that number depends on the program. Some are more and some are less. But we give you estimates for how much your housing may cost, how much your transportation and books and miscellaneous expenses might cost. And then you can say, okay, well, I'm going to find housing that's less expensive than that, so I'm only going to borrow a portion of that money, or I'm only going to have a portion of the miscellaneous money. So all of that is up to you on how much you take. So the only mandatory charges that you have to pay are your tuition and fees, and then your housing and other things, which most students have to pay anyway. You'll have to look at those costs and decide, do I need to take loans for those? And if so, you can use the federal loan programs to do that. And again, I mentioned most students don't really go into private loans, but that's up to you if you wish to do that. Just some important dates if you're thinking about applying for this year. Our summer 2020 starts another little over a month on the 19th of May. Some of these programs offer summer courses, so architecture does, forensic and legal psychology does not. Forensic mental health counseling only does if you're in the program in that middle year. Otherwise, for most students, that fall semester is going to matter the most to you. It starts in September this year because Labor Day is a little bit later. We go until December. We have a traditional month off or so in the intersession, then you have a spring semester. And again, the summer term will run similarly with mid-May to mid-July or so. In the photo on the right, you actually see a lot of our forensic mental health counseling students and a few of our architecture students, ironically, as well as I see a few business students there. We have a graduate student association on our campus, so part of your fees supports the grad student association. And we do, we're not doing any right now, unfortunately, but do trips to sporting events. That was the Providence Bruins game there. We have a trip planned for the Boston Red Sox. We've gone to musicals at the Providence Performing Arts Center. We're going to be doing some StrengthsFinder training. We did professional headshots. We brought in a photographer to do that for students. We've done some dinners on campus. There's lobbying opportunities for graduate student issues on campus. So there's a lot of things to come out of the Grad Student Association that I think are important in supporting your experience while you're in school. So I encourage you to be involved with that. We also have, for the psychology students, there's a student lounge. There's also lectures that we bring in on campus, especially with the architecture program, although psych does a few. Architecture brings in a lot of firms to speak. We also have our recreation center. We reduced the cost for graduate students this year, so it's only $50 per 6 months. So essentially for the year, you pay $100, which is cheaper than most any gym in the area, and includes access to our pool. We have a 2-floor fitness center, which the glass windows overlook the water, so it's a pretty spot to work out. We have racquetball and squash courts and all of that, so it's a really nice facility. Our dining commons, our dining's been nationally ranked, so we have very good high quality food. Roughly a third of their ingredients are sourced from local farmers as well, so it's good quality. And there's a number of facilities available on campus, morning till evening, and there's even our lower dining commons is open until midnight, 1 or 2 in the morning, especially on the weekends. The architecture students, if you're working late in your studio, you can go over there and grab a bite to eat if you're on campus late. We also have, because of our location on the water, if you'd like to take a paddleboard out and go kayaking, those are available to you. We're close to a lot of major cities. As I mentioned, we're only a half hour to Providence, an hour to Boston. We're convenient to Logan Airport in Boston, about a little over an hour from us. The Providence Airport's about a 35-minute drive from us. A lot of restaurants, shopping, bars, local stuff to do. If you like to sail, certainly that's a big activity around here. You see in the photos, in the lower left photo, there's that's one of our beaches. We have a lot of beaches close by, within 20 minutes of campus. We also have the oldest continuously running 4th of July parade in the country in Bristol. So it's a really nice town atmosphere for our students. And the last kind of piece here I'll mention very quickly is that our students, in terms of housing, most of our full-time students are relocating from other states. So we try to provide a lot of resources for you in finding housing. And so a lot of the housing around us, there are some apartment complexes. For example, here in Middletown, we have a number of complexes available, some in Portsmouth as well. Bristol has a few. Largely, most of the rentals there are subdivided units in homes. So you might have an apartment to yourself in a home, or you might rent a house with a group of other students, and that's very economical. And you can be within 10 or 15-minute drive to campus, or you can be on our shuttle route or even on the bus route, because we have the buses that run from as far south as Newport all the way up to Providence and everywhere in between. So it's very easy to get around to and from campus. And depending on where you want to live, there are some more urban areas that you might find are economical, and there's some, like in Fall River, Massachusetts, about 20 minutes from campus, there are some old mill buildings that they've converted into these beautiful townhouses. Or you can live more closer to campus, which is a little quieter, it's a little more rural. If you want to live near the water, there's a lot of different places. So depending on your interests, we can help kind of point you in the right direction. On our website, we've developed a Google Map resource that has a listing of all the major communities where students live. You see in the middle of that photo there where our campus is and the town of Bristol. And most of our students live in the shaded areas, and I'd say largely the ones that are more close to campus in a tighter radius are where students more commonly live. But we can give you any sort of assistance that you need. And as you get further along in your process, and if you're admitted and you decide you're coming, especially if you're from further away, Sarah and I in our office are willing to go and meet landlords, take pictures for you. We can FaceTime you, show you the neighborhood, whatever you need to help you kind of get a sense of the neighborhood and where you might be living. And especially if you're trying to sign a lease and you aren't able to come see it, we can be your boots on the ground to kind of help you with doing that. So let us know if we can help support you. If you're interested in connecting with us, we're on all the major social media. We have a graduate students group, so as you're applying, if you want to join there, you can meet other grad students and ask questions. We also are on Twitter and Instagram. We're most active, I'd say, on Instagram, but you can find us on each of those channels and learn a little bit more about us and see photos and some of the other experiences that we have. So that's all I have for information for you. I hope that was helpful. I know I talked about probably a whole lot, and I was kind of throwing a lot at you at one time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. At this point, please ask them in the questions box there, and I'm happy to respond to them. Also, I'm happy again to set up a more personal visit for you if that's more helpful, or a personal meeting. And just let me know if you want. You can even write in the box there just your email address if you want me to reach out to you and set something up. But I appreciate your time. I hope this was helpful today, and I appreciate your understanding as we're all sitting in our living rooms and trying to keep things going as normal as possible. And we're hoping to get back on campus real soon. And if you see on our website on the grad.rwu.edu page, you'll see that I provided a virtual walking tour with my iPhone and walked around campus and along the water and into various buildings on campus. So you can at least see the campus a little bit. Unfortunately, I did it after all the students had left due to the outbreak, but you can at least see the campus and get a sense for that. So are there any questions that I can answer right now? I mean, I know I covered a lot of content, so I know you probably need some time to digest that a little bit, but feel free to email me or call if I can help with anything. And again, since we're not in the office, if you call that number, you'll get my office line. You can just leave a voicemail and I can call you back from my cell here at home. And if you want, we can do a virtual meeting like this and talk one-on-one. It doesn't appear like there are any additional questions right now. Again, I hope that was helpful for you. And if you need anything at all, feel free to reach out. So thanks again. I hope you all stay healthy and safe, and we hope to hear from you soon.